speaker is Bill Tobin. Is going to tell us a little bit about the Vietnam War. And again, just on a historical timeline, I mean, just the heroic sacrifice of these wars. 400,000 Americans died in World War II. Another 36,000 died in Korea. And another 54,000 died in Vietnam.
Excuse me, 58.
58.
58,220.
Well, there you go. And Bill was born in Whitman, Massachusetts, and he comes from a family, in terms of service, World War I and World War II. One brother was in the Marine Corps at Palau and Guadalcanal. One brother was a gunner on a destroyer in the Pacific. Imagine that with a kamikaze. And one brother was a Marine Corps soldier at the end of the Korean War. Bill comes to us from quite a sports career too. He was selected Quincy Patriot Ledger football all-scholastic. That was from Whitman Hanson Regional High School. And actually you played under Joe Zablisky at Northeastern. And weren't you the team that beat Harvard?
No.
No. Well, one of you.
JVs did.
There you go. All right. Well, I thought that was pretty good. Varsity athlete in football. He was in the ROTC, and he received his commission as second lieutenant after he graduated from Northeastern and completed not only the Army Signal School, but the Army Airborne School. That in itself is a big accomplishment. And then Rotary Wing Flight School. He served in Vietnam with the 129th Assault Helicopter Company. Awards received in Vietnam: the Bronze Star, 13 air medals, 2 for heroism with valid device, the Vietnam Cross of Gallantry for heroism, rewarded by the Republic of Vietnam. And as I understand on this Bronze Star, that you were under fire for something like 25 hours. I mean, to even be eligible for that?
No, an air medal was awarded for having 25 missions in actual combat. But
Wow.
the Bronze Star was awarded for meritorious service throughout the whole year.
Okay. Well, after Vietnam, Bill has made the military his career as assigned professor of military science at MIT. 2 tours of flying in Germany along the East German border, and you finished your career at the Pentagon and the National Security Agency. And during your career, my God, look at this list of medals: Joint Service Commendation Medal, Meritorious Service Awards, 3 of them, Army Medal, the Legion of Merit.
Thank you very much.
Quite a resume. That's great.
First, let me say that I returned from Vietnam 34 years ago, and this is the first time anybody's ever asked me to speak about Vietnam. So I'm a little emotional about that. Sir, it's an honor to be in your presence. Let's see, where do I start? Well, what I thought about when Jimmy asked me was, he said, would you like to take part in the question and answer period? And I said, of course, I'd be more than glad to. And to follow these 3 gentlemen here is a virtual impossibility to speak on any level that they did. But what I want to do is try and put a little bit of perspective here, if I can, in why I went to Vietnam. A lot of people went to Vietnam for a lot of different reasons. I had an aspiration to fly all my life, and take an ROTC at Northeastern University gave me the opportunity to go to flight school. And after flight school, everybody graduating from flight school went to Vietnam as a helicopter pilot. That was the assault aspect of what the Army was doing at that time. In arriving in Vietnam, we didn't have the technology that I think I'd like to have you keep in mind here for the next 5 or 10 minutes that I talk about this. Technology is something to keep in perspective of what was going on in Vietnam at the time with aviation, and I'm only going to speak of aviation units in Vietnam. As a helicopter pilot, you basically went over there on a plane with a bunch of other people, you landed, and then you were selected to go to different units. As you see in today's Army, the Army is moving forward in kind of a regimental basis where they move the units as units. I was assigned to an area called Pleiku in the Ankei Pass, and it was an assault helicopter company. And right out of the chute, you go right into the left seat or the right seat. I'd like to have you keep in mind a couple of aspects of this. There were over 7,600 approximately helicopters in Vietnam. 3,500, or about 47% of the helicopters in Vietnam, were destroyed. 2,197 helicopter pilots were killed in Vietnam, about less than 3% of the total number of people that were, the total soldiers that were killed. There were about 2,700 crew chiefs and door gunners that were also killed in the air aspect of Vietnam. The assignment was some days you flew 13 hours, other days you didn't fly because of weather. Keep in mind that we didn't own the night. The technology, we weren't able to fly these helicopters at night. You get into a situation where weather, you weren't able to fly the helicopters. If you made a combat assault, you had to go back in and take the troops out sometimes a day or two after you expected to because of the inability of these aircraft to fly in inclement weather or to fly at night. Along comes technology where night vision goggles, which we used against the East German border, enabled us to fly at night, and now we own the night, so to speak, and most of these assaults do take place during the night, where they took place during the day. The logistics trail to helicopter or aviation aspect of it is that you only had approximately 2 hours on station. The aircraft was about 2 hours and 20 minutes was the maximum fuel levels. So when you conducted assaults, you always had to have other aircraft that were moving your POL and logistics forward for you where you'd hot refuel. That's while the aircraft was running. Sometimes these things, accidents were caused and so on like that. This is difficult for me to kind of tie together what I did as a person when so many people participated in this to make it all happen. We had maintenance crews that worked all night long, crew chiefs that worked all night long. The technology as far as navigational systems, we had no beacons, we had some special forces and so on the ground where you'd fly at approximately 1,000 or 2,000 feet, and then you'd begin to shoot your approach into that area this way. Whereas after the war went on in An Khe in that area, the North Vietnamese began to use an SA-7 missile. And when that SA-7 missile began to take its first effect on aircraft, we realized that we had to change all of our concepts in aviation. We had to get down on the deck, and that developed nap of the earth type flying, where before a mission was planned, you had to understand exactly where all the aircraft were going to grow at a lower level, which would reduce the effect of the SA-7 missiles. Technology-wise, the back of the Huey only had one engine. You'll notice now we have redundancy in the engines in the technology in the aircraft that we have today, built by Sikorsky. They used to put what was called after the first SA-7 hit some of the aircraft, they put what was called a toilet bowl on the back, which would disperse the hot exhaust coming out. So technology, I think, is one of the things I'm trying to enable people to understand the difference in the time frame of Vietnam and what we currently operate on in Iraq and so on now. That's the basis of what I wanted to say, was just how one went about that. Most of the warrant officers were right out of high school. And if you look at I have some statistics with me, but if you look at the numbers of pilots that were killed, there were approximately 1,100 warrant officers, CW1 and CW2 warrant officers. These were the kids right out of high school that found that to be an aspiration. They didn't have to have a college degree, but they went in, they learned to fly. And also the first lieutenants, 860 first lieutenants and captains were killed. The average age of the helicopter pilot that was killed in Vietnam was 25.5, and that includes one general officer. There were over 553 civilians killed in the actual Hueys that went down. That concludes my portion of aviation or my tour of duty in Vietnam. Obviously, during the question and answer period, I'd be more than glad to answer any questions anybody has. Again, I thank you very, very much, and it's an honor to be in the presence of the three gentlemen that spoke before me. Thank you for your time.